So we do have O coming up at 7:30 though, and we were kind of talking like, you were like, okay, what do we want to ask him about, where your concerns are, and right now I don't think it's any I don't think it's any secret, man. When you look at this roster, it's not just that you're okay almost everywhere, but you look like you could be damn good almost everywhere, right? The running back room overflowing with talent. The wide receiver room overflowing with talent. Same thing for the defensive backfield, the defensive line. Linebacker is definitely one of the areas that I think you would look at and say, okay, you could use a little work there. But by far, I think the main concern
I don't know, T.
Is the offensive line to me.
The work they've done at linebacker real quick.
Yeah.
I mean, to make that position, which was a glaring position of concern when you pulled out of New Orleans for the national from the national championship game to what they've done without a spring practice. I mean, it's almost a spot where you don't feel good because they've got some unproven guys there, but they've got at least options now. Because I think the concern was the limited amount of depth, and that carries over to what you're talking about, the offensive line. I think
and as far as linebacker goes, I mean, just adding Jabril Cox, you added a guy who was a top 70 NFL prospect. And so, obviously, like that's a huge win. And that immediately solves a ton of the issues that you had there.
And I think Devontae Lee and Marcel Brooks in that option pool as well is guys that they weren't counting on.
So they got talent there. I guess one of the reasons why you're a little more concerned about that offensive line is, while Liam Shanahan from Harvard, the guy that you added, seems like a great depth play, I don't know that you're going to expect him to come in here and have an impact like Jabril Cox. And it's a lot of times people talk about in like team building theory, how it starts up the middle. And you mean by that, like, your nose guard, your center, your quarterback, right? And it all kind of radiates out from there. Well, it's tough when you're replacing your center and your quarterback. And then when you're working in a new quarterback, there is nothing better to ease that transition and to get that guy to help him along than having a great and solid offensive line. And right now, when you look at this LSU offensive line, there's talent there, sure, but there's a lot of unknowns. I mean, you're going to have Ed Ingram at left guard, which is great. Austin Deculus at right tackle, stalwart. They've been there forever. But, I mean, look, we haven't talked about Cardell Thomason forever, right? Where does he fit in? Him and Anthony Bradford jostling for that right guard position. At left tackle, you think you have talent, but there's just so many unknowns with Cam Wire and Dare Rosenthal. And then at center. I mean, Chase and Hines never played the position before. They just moved Joseph Evans. I mean, that gives you an idea of the depth there, right? They just moved Joseph Evans over there to offensive line, and he's the second-string guy.
Yeah.
Right now. And so it's just, I want to hear what Coach O has to say, because it concerns me anytime you're working in a new quarterback and you have question marks at center and left tackle. Like, if you were to take the two positions on the line that most need to be figured out when working a new quarterback, it would be center and left tackle. So we'll see kind of how the spring has gone in that regard, in the Zoom meetings, and how Hines is continuing to develop. But that's kind of where my head is at when I look at this team. And the thing is, if you can figure those positions out, I mean, you could be looking at the differences between maybe having a 9-win regular season and like an 11-win regular season. I know that sounds crazy, but that's how impactful I believe those two positions on quarterback play, and then by extension, the rest of the team will be.
I want to ask him a couple of things specifically about his schedule, because we've heard him talk about in the offseason, really, especially around this time, where they're game planning for the next year. They're looking at their opponents, they're breaking them down, and want to talk to him about the first true road trip that Miles Brennan is going to take and how relatable it is to a couple of years ago when he took Joe Burrow and that 2018 team into the swamp, into a game that they could have won, but they got beat in a real physical game.
Yeah.
And how he likes how his schedule kind of is unfolding, and that Florida team, the challenge for Brennan when he looks at his schedule at this part of the season. I know that he takes it one game at a time within the year, but when you have a chance to look at it from 30,000 feet, I obviously want to hear him speak about the offensive line. I'm going to ask him about Todd Harris coming back to the defensive backfield. We talked to Bill Bush about that a couple of weeks back. If you have a question for Coach O, hop inside the huddle, hashtag Ask Coach O, or if you're watching on Facebook Live, hashtag Ask Coach O. If there's something out there specifically that you want to hear about, get it in. We'll get it across to the head coach coming up here in a couple of minutes.
And I know we talked the schedule a couple weeks back, and whatever, people are always coming in and out when they're listening. But like when you look at the schedule, it's not bad. It's not a bad schedule for working in new guys. Like I said, because you're going to get a nice little UTSA opening. So first live reps is almost like a preseason game. Now, then you got a pretty massive test with Texas. Not to say that Texas is very good, but they're a legitimate team, and I think Sam Ehlinger does worry me a bit coming into Tiger Stadium. But if you pass that Texas test, then you got Rice, easy, and you got Ole Miss, which is going to be a step up from UTSA and Rice, but not a very good team, but still an SEC team nonetheless. So you kind of break through, you get eased into SEC play. Then you get a little breather, you get Nichols at home. And then, as you said, Jordy, if you manage to pass Texas, you should be entering that Florida game 5-0. If you've been starting by that point, obviously you got almost half a season under your belt. You're feeling a little confident, and then it's time to go see, because that will be a potential launching point or a potential point where you're maybe like, okay, yeah, 9-3 probably is feeling what the regular season's going to be. So it's not a bad schedule for LSU at all. Yeah, and something I didn't mention, an Amos user pointed out, and I think it's very important to point out, is that what does make you feel better about this is the job that James Craig has done with this offensive line, because there have been question marks last couple of years. They have been shuffling guys in and out, different starting lineups every week. And well, obviously last year they still won the Joe Moore Award. So James Craig has earned his keep up to this point. He got a raise. He's going to have to continue to earn his keep with this year's line.